In the previous chapter of our Total Training InDesign CS6 Essentials course, we covered how to create a simple printed business form from scratch. In this chapter, let's take that to the next level by converting that form that we created for print into an interactive digital form that respondents can fill out on their computer and submit online rather than using a pencil and paper. This also serves as a good transition to our advanced Total Training InDesign course on digital and interactive design. Let's start down that road by turning our printed business form into something that we can have people fill out and submit to us online. One of the great new features of working with Adobe InDesign CS6 is its ability to create interactive forms. Traditionally, what we've done is we've used pen and paper to fill out forms and then submitted those to people to transcribe all that information into some type of printed or digital record that you could pull reports and information from. Adobe InDesign CS6 allows you to design those interactive forms directly, not only to allow people to fill them out online or directly on their computer screen if you supply them to them, but also to extract the data that they fill in. So it makes it much easier for you to not only get that information, but to compile it and do something with it as an end result. Now, the way that's previously been done is that people would use InDesign to build the background, if you will, based on that traditional printed form. Then they would use Adobe Acrobat or Acrobat Professional's add-on feature, Lifecycle Designer, to create an overlay that would hold those interactive data fields. With InDesign CS6, you can actually create that overlay directly in the page layout program. And while there are still some instances where you'll have to go to Acrobat to touch up, primarily if you're tabulating informations to do calculations from multiple fields, you can still set up just about any field that you would need directly working with InDesign CS6. We're going to demonstrate that now by going to the welcome screen and clicking on the Open button. If you don't have your welcome screen up, just use the keyboard shortcut Control-O if you're working on a PC or Command-O if you're working on the Mac to open the Chapter 9 folder that contains a file we're going to use for this exercise. Now, we're going to use the completed form for print file. I'm going to double click on that, and when it opens up, you'll see that this looks just like the file that we created for our print form in the previous chapter of this InDesign CS6 course. We're going to take the print file that's already been created, and we're going to use it as fodder to build an interactive digital form. Now, the fastest and easiest way for us to do that is to change to a custom workspace that's been built into InDesign CS6 to make that very easy. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to change the workspace that we're using from our TT class to interactive for PDF. And when I do that, it changes this layout to show what type of options we have to work with to add interactivity to a traditional InDesign document file. The area we specifically want to use is this Buttons and Forms panel that's available right here. Let me click on that, and you'll see that it offers a number of options for what we can do, and most all of them are grayed out because we haven't created anything that allows us to set up a form field. I'm going to zoom this page up just a little bit to 100%, and I'm going to move it over so we can see what we're working with on the InDesign document page as well as our Buttons and Forms panel. And I'm going to create something that we can turn into a form field by simply taking this rectangle tool right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag down and to the right to create a data field, just like so. Now, as I've done this, I see I have options that are available now in the Type options box in my Buttons and Forms panel. If I open that up, I can turn this into a button. So if I click on it, it's going to do something. I can turn it into a checkbox that I can select to say on or off, yes or no, A or B. I could turn it into a combo box or a list box that would allow respondents to choose options that I provide for them to give me data in that field. I could make it a radio button, which would allow me to make an exclusive choice amongst multiple options that I provide on the form. If I want them to digitally sign that, we could turn that into a signature field. But in this case, what we want to do is we want to turn this into a text field. We're actually going to go through the process to use all of these other options later in this chapter of our InDesign course. But for right now, we're going to work primarily with text fields for this unit. I'm going to select that, and when I do so, you'll notice that it changes this field from a solid blue line to, in this case, it shows a dotted blue line. In addition, you'll see that it has a little icon in here with a box and a text cursor that lets me know that this is a text field that respondents can fill in to get data. Now, by default, every field you create is named. In this case, since we created a text field, it's named text field number 1. We're going to change it from that rather cryptic name to name to reflect the data that we want to get out of it. And by default, it's going to create one new event on release or tap, which means basically when you get out of that field, what it's going to allow us to do is capture that information with that digital PDF form so it can be extracted later and compiled for other purposes. I want to add an additional option to this, and that is on click, which means once I click into that field, I'm going to add a feature. And I have other actions that I could do on rollover, so if my cursor gets into that area, on roll off, so if it leaves after I run my cursor over that area, on focus, which basically translates into what would happen if we set that up and bring that information into the field, or on blur, what would happen when we exit that field. Again, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select on click, and I'm going to add a brand new action. Now, there are a number of things that I can do. I can choose to go to separate pages, just as it shows right here, or what I can do is I can go to a web address, I can have it show or hide buttons and forms, I could have it play a sound so it could go ta-da when I finish up that form, I could have it play a video, clear the form, go to the next view or previous view that I looked at on screen, I could have it open another file or print this form, submit this form, or in this case what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the view zoom. So when somebody gets into this, what it's going to automatically do when they get in that first field for name is it's going to take the PDF file form and set it to fit the width across the width of either the web browser that I look it in or Adobe Reader or Adobe Acrobat if that's what I use to fill out the form. Beneath this, I have some additional options. By default, it's set to be printable and to be scrollable, so I can look up and down if there's multi-line information. But I want to do some other things to it. I want to say that it's required to fill out this field. So if I get in here, I cannot submit this form or finish this form unless this field is filled out to be required. It's awful hard for me to sign someone up for a subscription or ship them a DVD course if I don't know their name in the first place. We're not going to use the password option, which would allow me to only fill out or access that field if I had entered the secret word. This is a great feature, for example, for people that set up fields for internal use only. Read only, we're not going to set either. What that would do is that would allow me to see whatever information is in the field, but I couldn't enter my own or change the information that was already there. I want them to put their own information in this spot. And then multi-line, which we are going to select. By default, Adobe Acrobat will try to fit whatever information you put on a single line. So the more information you enter inside that field, Acrobat will automatically make the type size smaller so it can all fit on a single line, to the point where it literally gets microscopic if you try to put all that text in there. To save yourself and your eyesight, if somebody wants to enter a novella in that field, selecting the multi-line option maintains the font size that's loaded down below and puts soft returns in when it fills up a line and allows me to put more information in there. So if your settings are just like mine, we've set for on-click to view zoom and to set that to fit width. For the PDF options we've set below to make it printable, a required field, multi-line so people can enter a lot of information in there, and have it scrollable, we've got that first field set. And we can just get our selection tool and click away to work with it. Now I'm actually going to make this just a little bit smaller, so I'm going to click on it with that selection arrow and bring it down just a touch, like so. With that done, I'm going to go back to the rectangle tool, and I'm going to create a second field over here for address. So I'm going to drag this down and to the right so it shows with the smart guides that it's exactly the same height as the field I created for name, and that it covers this bottom line here. And in fact, as I drew that, it looks a little bit large, so I'm going to get my selection arrow and scoot this in just a little bit. I'm going to take that, I'm going to make it a text field. I'm going to change the name of that from that cryptic text field 2 to address. I'm not going to add the second action where I had it inherit that zoom. And I'm also not going to change the options that I had built before. So I want it to be printable. I want it to be required that people have to give me that information. I want to set it multi-line, so if I get a very long address, it won't artificially shrink down the type size to microscopic sizes, and to allow that to be scrollable. So I've created my second field right here. I'm just going to copy and paste for the rest of these fields right in here. So I'm going to go Control-C, because I'm working with a Windows PC for this chapter. I'm going to go Control-V to paste. If you're on a Mac, what you can do is go Command-C and Command-V to copy and paste, just like I've done right here. I'm going to move this right over here so it lines up, adjust it in, and I'm going to use my cursor keys, the arrow keys that sit between the typewriter and the calculator side on a standard desktop keyboard, to bump that down right against that blue line. I'm going to go Control-V once again to paste. Move this in for my zip, and again, let my smart guides let me know I've got things lined up the way I want. Then adjust it to fit. Go Control-V one more time. Just set that up for the phone number. And Control-V one last time. To set this up for email. Now what I did was I got all the options that I wanted. It'll acquire whatever information's on there on release or tapping out. They'll be printable, they're required fields, they're multi-line, and they're scrollable. But what I didn't do was I didn't name them. InDesign did that automatically for me, whether I wanted them to or not. In this case, because I copied the address field 5 times, this is named now address 5. But otherwise, everything's set up and ready to go. I'm going to change this to email and work my way back. Click on this one right here, change it to phone number. Click on this one, turn it into zip code. Then click on this one and name it City State. So each of these fields now has its own unique name that's relevant to the data that I want to put in there. Just like so. So we've created all the fields we're going to use at the top of the form. Actually, let me do a quick adjustment right here. I'm going to move that in so it fits that right side margin just like the rest. Now I'm going to go down to the bottom of the form and we're going to create text fields for the credit card number, the expiration date, and the security code. Going to get my rectangle tool. Turn this into credit card number, CCNO. Now I don't want to make that one required because these folks might choose to pay by check or money order. And I don't really need to make it multi-line as long as I've allowed enough room for 16 numbers, which is the typical number for what we've got for a credit card. I'm going to create a similar field right over here for my expiration date in months and years. And then right down here, for my security code. So we've actually, at this point, created all of the fields that we need to work with this document. I'm going to zoom out on my screen to 50% size so I can see all the fields that we're working with on this form. And sure enough, I've got them all right here. And each one of them I click into show that dotted line to indicate that they're data fields. But they also have formatting that I can use to fine-tune this and make this look compatible for the regular form I'm working with. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down and I'm going to select each of these fields by clicking on the line around them. You notice as I get close to them, they highlight to let me know that's exactly what I'm selecting. And I'm going to change the formatting for these just like I would for any rectangle or any element that I'd created directly in InDesign. Now, I don't want a stroke here, so I'm going to give it a stroke of none. And as I do so, the outline that I saw around there is going to disappear. I'm going to change the fill for all these fields to match up with our spot colors. So I'm going to make it that Pantone 288C. I'm going to scale back the tint from 100% solid to 10% shading so it'll match up for what we've got here inside those tables that were created in the last chapter of this InDesign CS6 course. So we've done all the basic formatting that we have available to us. We've created the data fields to hold text, and we're ready to work with this. We don't want to lose our work, but don't save it just yet. We want to create a copy of this original file. So I'm going to go to the File pull-down menu, and I'm going to select Save As. And in this case, I'm going to give it the name that we've been using for all of our previous chapters of this InDesign CS6 course. So I'm going to give it my first name, and then the number 9 to correspond with Chapter 9. Click the Save button, and when I do that, I'll see that I have my randy9.indd file, and we're ready to go to the next unit of this InDesign course.